Sorry, lady. I'm gonna have to just put that here.
Oh yes, she was. Both sat.
Ooh, we might be able to do a bit of the, like that. Yeah, I wonder how I'm gonna. I wonder how this is going to go, Mary. Perhaps there's a reason the other tripod is much more expensive.
Yes. Functionality.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Oh well. Hello, good afternoon. Sorry I'm late. There was lots of traffic and it's London, so no one lets you out. So that was great. Anyway, so this is the new sign. I do feel like, I don't know, it's 1980s TV. Which weirdly was something that my husband and I did last night. There's a quiz on YouTube, you know, where you can do 1980s TV theme tunes. It's endless joy. Anyway, this is Let Women Speak. I don't reckon that's going to work like that, Mary, after all. Do you? All right. That is all I've got. Okay, so thank you for coming. I know it's really cold. And also, there is a bizarre thing going on in this country where some people have this weird idea that the war is won. And it's really not. But we started here to talk about, years ago, to talk about the things that other people were not talking about, and it was deemed too risky to talk about. And we know that time is over because Jimmy Carr finally said something. So thanks, Jimmy. Thanks a lot, so much. It would have been useful, brave or something years ago, like he says about Graham. But yeah, thanks. So I went to watch Ricky Gervais actually the other night, and he still wondered. Did you watch it?
Yeah, last Saturday.
Okay. So really good. Doesn't really even mention this stuff anymore, which I guess means it's gone past its kind of value as something sort of courageous and scary and whatever to talk about. But he does talk about some good stuff, am I right? Yeah. It was rather marvellous, and all the things that we want him to talk about, he was actually talking about. Anyway, so we started here because we weren't able to talk about men not having vaginas. So we would always start, and I guess I should just for tradition's sake, no woman has a penis. No man has a vagina. There's no such thing as non-binary. And transitioning children is profound abuse. So yes, well done everyone. See, it's kind of like, it's a little bit almost passé because we all know it and we all knew it, and now many, many people are brave enough to say it. And yet, we're still having to. So we're also going to do this. Oh, what a day this has been. What a rare mood I'm in. Why, it's almost like being a... It's wonderful. That was especially enthusiastic over there. So thanks very much. So what else should we be talking about? Well, what else we should be talking about, unfortunately, is still this. I went to my local council meeting, and I implore every single one of you to do the same. Let me tell you how that goes. So the council have something on the agenda, and you do have to monitor this stuff because they like to do a lot of this stuff without anybody else getting involved. So that's kind of they're accustomed to do it. They're accustomed to doing that, and I suspect, I don't know this to be true, but I suspect it's the same voices going to have a chat. My own council, for example, has... It's not funny. Has its own climate emergency team. Wiltshire Council, where we just spent millions on pavements because they wanted to get recycled materials, and the only people that can lay that for pavements are a company from Liverpool. So they came down. And also, my schools, I've just learnt, bearing in mind we know what they've been doing to schools, the schools in Wiltshire actually pay more for their gas and electric because they pay a little green tax on top. Like, there's stuff going... That just epitomises what councils are all about. And it's all about a lot of people feeling quite good about themselves. You stay. You sandbags, did you say, Mary? Yeah. Um, I can do loads of DIY as well, just with a knife, just with a kitchen knife. What a lovely bag. Hi. So what we know about councils is they have quite a lot of power to do often completely bonkers things. So again, talking about my own council, they have literally spent millions on pavements and benches for areas of the town that nobody walks on or sits in. Like genuinely. And then, for example, they won't be putting a lot of that money in schools, which I always think if you just make the school the best school ever, you will attract really nice people into the area and they will spend money in the area and you'll regenerate the whole town. It's not that difficult. So imagine that what those councils can also do is they can put a brand new leisure centre in the town and they will totally ignore the needs of women and girls and they will put a changing village in that. So that's the sort of thing that when they're looking at the planning and they're going to have a meeting, it's on the agenda, that you can have... Are you looking at me? No. Oh, okay, Mary. It's you. It's nice, isn't it, the scarf? It's so soft. You can get them at letwomenspeak.org. It's so good. So you can then go and give... I've literally just seen a parrot flying in the sky. Apparently they were parakeet, is it? They were released by the rock star Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, released them apparently, and now they're everywhere. I was going to make a really inappropriate joke about something. Then I won't do it. So anyway, no, I can't. I will be cancelled faster than a cancelled person. And I'm already quite cancelled. So you can give a 3-minute speech uninterrupted. My speech was 3 minutes at home and then actually was probably 4 minutes when you actually go and talk and you want to make sure that everyone can understand you and you allow for your stuttering. So I would thoroughly recommend you do that. I can't imagine my council is particularly different to anyone else's council. So you get 3 minutes as long as it's the item on the agenda and as long as you put your name in 10 minutes before at my council. Or what it might be is that you have to put your name in first to make sure that you're we only allow 3 people per item on the agenda. But it was a really good way of getting your voice heard, and then they debate. So because there was 18 items on the agenda in Wiltshire, and they spent 2 hours talking about fully subsidising blue badges for parking, 2 whole hours, which might have deserved 2 whole hours to make sure that they didn't have any other costs trying whatever. Anyway, I won't debate that issue. But that 3 minutes is really good because there will be a lot of people in that council chamber who think that nobody cares about it and they just want to shut up and just let that item go through and nobody talk about changing rooms. And if you can just introduce even a tiny little bit of doubt, so they go back to, and it's obviously the earlier in the debate you can get in, the better. So 3 minutes. It will be put online. I mean, I don't expect my council's ever had anything viewed 170,000 times, which they have. And because I challenged the deputy leader, who's a Lib Dem, I don't even know if the word leader goes with Lib Dem, but apparently. And she was sat 2 away from Helen Belcher. And it's just really interesting because my theory is that when it comes to rotten apples, the council just needs one Helen Belcher for an entire cesspit of rot in a council, where in every place people are too frightened to actually say, well, that's a man, isn't it? Like that's, and I just recommend you all go and break that spell, that particular spell. And if you don't have any massive troons on your council in the cabinet, then you know that there will be someone yanking some chain somewhere who claims to be some sort of putrid ally. And I say putrid because I genuinely mean it. But so anyway, that's a real bit of direct action The other thing I want to talk about, because I haven't spoken since I talked to this particular individual, is you may have seen a photo of me, and I think Johnny Bell exaggerated it and made me really tiny. But I'm standing near a man who I believe has taken hormones, although he still had a beard, like just lots of facial hair. But he claimed that he was a woman. And he was talking about gender and sex to somebody else. And I came in the conversation just to say, as I always do, I just want you to know that it's not okay for you to use women-only spaces, because I do think some of these men will have told themselves no one's ever said anything. And it will be a lie, and it will be a lie that they tell themselves. But I think it's really important. We don't have to be hugely aggressive, because I fundamentally believe the person I was talking to was very vulnerable and had been sold this magic, get out of feeling anxious and awful and hating yourself, get out of that particular prison free with this, well, you must be a woman then. And he was rather large, but I reckon he was about 6'4". And he said, but I am a woman. And so I talked to him, and I just want to say that these are also, bless you, these are also victims in this whole thing. I know I always talk about these men being AGPs, and I have no doubt that he probably is one also. But that doesn't mean that he isn't a victim of this. And I would imagine he's been a very useful person to all of those really, really malicious, malevolent AGPs that have used him to further their own agenda. And so I hope that... What bird is that? I don't know. I hope that everyone could see that whilst I did feel for him, I did feel that he was a victim, but also that he still needed to be told the truth again and again, but in a way that was a little more maternal than I may usually, the tone that I might usually use. And that's because I think he maybe years ago could have been accessed if somebody had loved him and his family loved him enough to tell him that he was just fine exactly how he was and his life was not going to be improved. There's a man on Twitter that keeps coming, and says he's got a trans daughter, and I'm like, I'm sorry you don't love your child enough to not want them to have a life of being ridiculed or being frightened of, which is kind of the two things that happens when a man pretends to be a woman. He's either really frightening in spaces where he shouldn't be, or he's a source of ridicule. And the ridicule or fear will come whether or not you've got a penis yourself. And if you've got a penis yourself, then he's a source of endless ridicule and ridiculousness. And if you haven't, he's someone that you worry about is going to be in a toilet next to you, or a changing room, or next to your daughter, or next to someone you love. And then there's one more thing I just want to talk about before I let women speak. And we will be going down there probably at 2, actually, because I feel that is quite a lot of fun. And I feel it's needed more than ever. The other thing is the NHS. And I won't go on too much about my experience with it, because you may have seen it, but my daughter was in hospital with sepsis. And then the last week I spent a couple of days with the Darlington nurses, who, it was very difficult when I was listening to Bethany give her testimony. It was really, really difficult not to just weep and at her courage. And the day before, Karen had given her testimony, and Karen was a victim of childhood sexual abuse who had a panic attack. And in cross-examination, the NHS, let's just remind ourselves again, the NHS that we pay for, the NHS that we have been indoctrinated into trusting beyond anything, the NHS employed someone as legal counsel to undermine, scrutinise, and what's the word? When you make someone intimidate? No, it's not quite that. But anyway, they wanted to make her out to be a liar. Smear, thanks so much. So his job as legal counsel is to smear the witnesses. There were 26 women that started that complaint, and 8 of them have taken it forward. And his job, the NHS's job, in order to win, is to make those women look dodgy, to look like they're raging bigots, to make it look like the bloke who asking him to undress in his holy little dirty little boxer shorts, to make him look like the victim and those women look like the aggressors. Now, I've had a lot to say about the NHS over the last few weeks because my experience of the NHS was horrendous. But this doesn't diminish at all the fact that there are numerous incredibly experienced, hard-working nurses in the NHS. I just didn't encounter any in my experience when I went to Bath. But I have no doubt that all of these nurses wanted the very best for their patients. And Bethany was extraordinary in the witness box, and I'm sure all the other women will be just the same. But it just struck me when I'm pissed off about the NHS and how my daughter was treated, and how a nurse just turned up and they were talking loudly, like all the other complaints. I was there, but let's just imagine that it was good old Rose from Darlington on that night when my daughter buzzes and asks someone for medication, and they have to, because she can't really move, they have to pull back the sheet to scan her little wristband before they give her medication, and maybe she can't get up because she couldn't sit up on her own unassisted, and maybe the person who's going to help my daughter sit up in the middle of the fucking night is a bloke in a dress. Like, I think that's what we all think about when we think about those Darlington nurses. We think about the fact that they're hardworking, get to the end of a shift. Some of the, they're all human just like us with a plethora of experiences as women in this world. But in addition to that, there are those same people, but very unwell. And I think Karen also asked for Rose not to be seeing her when she was having, I think she had a hysterectomy. And she'd requested that he didn't, he wasn't looking after her when she was unwell. And the hospital said no. So imagine that that's just any patient. And the hospital would say no. And I'm just going to remind you that right at the beginning of me finding out about much of this, well, you're a bit late, aren't you? Yeah, I know. She's come as a poo emoji. So she's come as a witch. It's just a brown hat. I'm joking. I'm so sorry. You look amazing. Welcome. It's amazing. Iris is straight over for the guacamole, let me just say. She hasn't even said hello. Jesus Christ. That would be worse than anything I've just talked about. So I just want us to think that I lost my flow a bit there. I was too excited about Julia arriving. I just think it's really important that when we think about the Darlington nurses and that man on the ward, it's easy to sort of talk about, oh, he's in the changing room, isn't that awful? But I just wanted us to think about the survivors of sexual assault, or any woman actually, that wouldn't tell him to fuck off when he walked around that corner. And I just beg of you, if you've ever been at Darlington Memorial Hospital, and I've had a few people DM me this week to say that they have, please can you complain to the NMC and say that his presence on that ward, his presence in that hospital actually makes you lose confidence in the NHS. Because I think that's what we're going to have to start doing. The same as the doctors, any pride lanyards, any progress flags. I think it's about time that we stopped not being that particular squeaky wheel and we started really making a fuss all the time. It doesn't take that long to fill out a form for the NMC. If you can leave your name, that would be great. But this is the sort of thing we've got to do, because otherwise, we've had the Supreme Court judgment. Unfortunately, it hasn't been the kind of big final point that many of us hoped it would be. I mean, I had a feeling, because the law hasn't changed. So why would anyone change just because the Supreme Court said something? It was already in the Equality Act. We know it's made easier. I'm not saying that we weren't better off after the Supreme Court ruling than before, but I do wonder Whether the Supreme Court ruling made some people think, oh, okay, it's done. Oh, that's great, wonderful. I can just walk away now. There's no urgency. There's no pressure. When actually, in my council in particular, I'm not saying it is a raging troon doing it. I'm not saying it is a raging troon trying to get all of the women's toilets made into unisex spaces because he's so fucking annoyed that he can't go in those spaces and a woman might be allowed. I'm not saying it's that. I'm just saying if I was a raging troon and I'd spent my whole adult life trying to put my nasty little self into women-only spaces, I'm saying that if I could get women-only spaces completely eradicated, I might want to do that. I'm just not saying that is what's happening in my council. You know, I'm not saying if it was a cabinet member who was a raging troon, who'd spent his whole adult life trying to get himself into all women-only spaces. I'm not saying it's that. I'm just saying if it was, that would be the sort of thing that I would do. That would be the thing that I would do. I would put myself into all conversations and all spaces to make sure that no one could say that they think men in dresses trying to get into women-only spaces are predatory perverts. I'm just saying that's what I would do if I was a raging troon. I'd make a good raging troon, actually. I'd get into all the women's spaces. I'd shut all those spaces down. I'd shut them all down as a matter of urgency. That's what I would do. Anyway, would anyone else like to speak today? Yes, come on.
Hiya. I thought I'd give my little testimony here. I've been following you on YouTube for a long time, and I think you've handled everything really well. And actually, I've learned some things from you, Kellie-Jay, because you're quite an assertive person, and I'm not. And I need to learn these things. Basically, I was back in my teens a campaigner against pornography. Because I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Basically, it wasn't as bad as you think it could be, but it was a lot of groping. And somebody in my family used to look at page 3 in the newspaper and touch the girls in the family. And me being the eldest, I had to be the one to speak about it. So it was very difficult. And because I'm brought up Christian, I still am Christian, but there was a lot of forgiveness is taught, and I was taught to feel sorry for him because he's a lonely man, and that, you know, me as a child, I had to care about his feelings, and I felt divided because I also wanted to protect all my female sisters and cousins in the family. So then he never got punished for what he did, and we still had to go and see him regularly. And then what happened was, in my teens, I got a job as a cleaner in a factory after school, and there were lots of dirty calendars up everywhere. Myself and my friend, we really didn't like them, and there was a guy who was perving over my friend, so I said, look, I'll walk home with you, make sure you're okay, because he was stalking her a bit. And she went home, but I was still walking, so he followed me. And back then, stalking wasn't illegal. So the police said to me, well, if he'd have got you into his car, it would have been illegal. We would have done something, but he didn't. He just tried to get you into his car. So, and we knew who the guy was. He worked there. And my friend's dad was a lot tougher than my dad. So he went down to our employer and said, I want their wages. They're leaving. This is not acceptable. And the sexual discrimination at work was absolutely disgraceful back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. Then later on, I'm at uni and I get a job, and I'm really, really desperate for money. And it's in this shop, and I didn't know why they had a high staff turnover of female staff. And it was because the guy was a pervert. He tried to trap me into the shop at the end of the day, and I was very lucky to get away. And one of my male friends went down to get my coat for me because I'd run away and I'd left my coat there. And when he did, he sort of shouted at the man, and he got in trouble with the police for having shouted at him. But the other guy got away with it because there's no proof. And then I later found out that he actually raped another member of staff. And so I went back to the police and I explained what had happened to me, and they said, this is only circumstantial evidence, although there's DNA for what he did to this other woman who didn't know me at all. there's no proof that she didn't consent. So, and also because you went up to a room where you were to get your wages, you were exchanging money, so it could look like prostitution. This is what we went through. This is what we went through growing up. So I was really heavily into the campaign against pornography, and even when I was sort of 15, 16, there was a thing went on in the Labour Party. Claire Short was leading this thing where, because retailers at the time didn't have the right to refuse to sell pornography, that if they were part of a franchise, and it was WH Smith back then that were the distributors, if they were part of that franchise that was distributing the porn, they had to sell it. And this man, he didn't want to sell it, so he actually set fire to a load of things outside his shop and got in trouble. So there was a protest in London. My dad wanted to protect me, so he didn't let me go to the protest, but I did get involved in doing the petition to get signatures to give retailers the right to refuse, if they chose, to refuse to sell pornography, and we won. So it just shows you that it doesn't matter, your little voice, because I wasn't allowed to go to the protests, and there were people that chained themselves up to fences and got arrested and things, and I never got involved in any of that. But being part of doing the things that you're saying, Kellie-Jay, about contacting your council, getting involved in politics, your small voice can bring thousands of signatures to get things changed. And I've been sharing the one on banning the burqa that the government have got going at the moment, and we've only got until the 2nd of November to get 100,000 signatures on that one. So if you I think it's a good idea to look up on the government website any petitions they've got going and sign them, because every one signature is a voice. So that was that. And then later on I got married. And now this is to do with the NHS. I was pregnant and I didn't know. I was having an ectopic pregnancy, and you don't know because you don't have the normal signs of pregnancy. I was suddenly in excruciating pain, and I got brought into hospital. Basically, there was a gynae ward there that was all female nurses back then. And I felt really, really well looked after. And because I'm religious, I do not agree with abortion. So for me, not even knowing what this was, I was told, this lovely Catholic nurse that spoke to me, she said, look, I don't agree with this either, but if you don't let us help you tonight, you're going to be dead in the morning. And the pain was far worse than childbirth. And I was literally saying, no, I'd rather die. And I hadn't told my parents that I was in hospital because I didn't want them interfering with my decision. This was how strong I felt. So that night, but then I got in such bad pain that I said to the nurse, no, I think I will let you help me. And it was at the last, then they shoved me on that trolley, got me down for surgery and saved my life. And that lady, she was crying. She'd said to me, look, we're all women here, and we don't agree with this either, but we're by your side. And to me, it was so important to have a female nurse, because I had so many bad things happen to me regarding men. That the only person I had in my space was my own husband, no one else. And to me, to have those women there was the most important thing to me, that I could have a female. She saved my life, that woman. And if that had been a man, I may not have listened. And she acted like a mother towards me. And I was just crying to hear that these nurses have had to be put through what they're being put through. I don't like a man watching me get changed. You know, even my dad is a lovely man, and he's outnumbered by women in the family. He walks out of the room if you're breastfeeding or anything like that. That's chivalry. Today on the train, getting here, an hour's journey, I've had 2 incidences just today of Englishmen behaving like proper gentlemen. One of them asked me if I wanted to sit down on the train, and the other one let me get out of the underground before the doors shut. And I just thought, isn't that lovely? That's what men should do. You're bigger than me, you're stronger than me. It's up to you to protect me. And I think back to myself as that little girl who had to mother the person who was the abuser. It's not the job of little girls in their changing spaces to mother somebody who's got a mental health difficulty. You know, we do care. We have a natural thing inside of us. Of course we care about trans people. We are mothers ourselves. I've got grown-up children now, and 2 of them are very much in support of the trans movement. And even though they are heterosexual, but they're very angry with me because I stand my ground. And I'm here at a cost, really, because my children wouldn't like it. 2 of them don't mind. 2 of them are girls who want to be looked after. They're both working towards the NHS. One of them works in the NHS at the moment, training, and the other one, she actually left nursing after having a scholarship because she, within 2 days of going on the ward, she was bullied by a nurse. It wasn't to do with this issue. But she came home crying and dropped out. It is so tough. It's like being in the army. These are nurses. These are women who care about people, and we need them. And just recently, I had an invite to go for a regular mammogram, and it said, you will be welcomed by all female staff. And after having followed you guys on YouTube, I thought I better ask what you mean by that. So I did an email, and it came back a simple statement. I can confirm that everyone at this unit was born as a female. But they said at this unit, not everyone who says they're a female in the NHS is a female, so that if you get told that you're going to have a female, you're going to get somebody born as a female. And I just think it's an absolute disgrace, because the most vulnerable in our society are actually little girls. They are the weakest. Even if you think you're a female, you're 6 foot tall, you could be. You're always going to be physically stronger than me. And I deserve a space, and this is my space, and our children should be taught at school. This is my space, not be kind. Well, be kind to people, but most importantly, this is my space. This is my space. And if you're kind to me, you will respect my space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting that you say about be kind, because I think the school's job is to teach kindness by osmosis, and you can only do that if the children feel safe and secure. And so that's what we need. We need children to feel safe and secure with discipline. And then if they can exist, walk about, learn, then weirdly, they are actually quite kind. So I think that's how we teach the kindness, that we have like a rule of law throughout the school, and then children have the freedom to be kind. But I think that actually what we're doing with all this circle time of teaching kindness, and I know that you weren't saying that, so I'm not disagreeing with you, but with this idea about teaching kindness, it seems to have this opposite effect of actually producing kindness. It seems to teach a hierarchy of something where you are seen to be doing something as opposed to actually the thing that you should be. Yes. Go on. I can feel you.
Yeah, I just want to go back to one of the things you said about pornography. Back in the day, my second job, I think it was, in advertising in the West End, in the 90s, the lovely 90s. And there was a dark room there, and you'd go down and get your work processed, and it was covered in porn. I mean, you could see what these women had for lunch, basically. And I sort of went up to my line manager, and I sort of said, look, I find that quite offensive. And he was like, oh, just a bit of fun laugh, you know. So I thought about this, and I scratched my chin. And I went down to newsagent around the corner, and they had this magazine called For Women. Well, it wasn't for women, really. It was for gay men, because women don't really read a lot of porn. But anyway, I bought it, and I stuck all these pictures up in the darkroom. And fair play, they lasted 3 days, and then every single one got taken down. That's how you do it, ladies. Think outside the box. The other thing I wanted to say is to go back to councils. My council tried a very similar thing. I think I mentioned it a couple of months ago. A motion in support of trans rights. And they slipped it in just before recess. So quite a few monarchical feminist groups wrote a load of letters to the council. And they moved it to just after recess to the Housing and Inclusion Committee. So we wrote a lot more letters, and they withdrew it completely. So do keep an eye out on what your council's doing. They try and slip it in under the wire, but if you can get enough people, just go. And one of our ladies got legal advice as well, so we slipped that in there too and scared them. So really do keep an eye on what your council's doing. That's it.
You can ask me, yeah.
Just about West Streeting, there was the NHS meeting that he called.
What are we doing? They're fine. They're just, yeah.